The Clement Manyathela Show, live from the National Transport Conference, brought to you by the Department of Transport on 702.
It's 10:36, and now we continue our series that we started 2 weeks ago, looking at the role of multilateral institutions. We are focused on the United Nations, we've looked at the World Bank Organization, and today we are looking at the World Trade Organization. It's an important organization that sets global trade rules, how countries trade with one another. In fact, I think its rules and regulations, if I'm not mistaken, govern approximately, over 95% of all world trade as of 2024. That's the last I checked. But international trade shapes everything, as you know, from the price of food in our supermarkets to the opportunities that are available to South African exporters. But behind the scenes, there is this global body that's responsible for setting the rules that govern trade between the countries. It was established in 1995. It provides a framework for negotiating trade agreements and resolving disputes between countries when trade conflicts arise. And even us as South Africa, we've been a member of the World Trade Organization since its formation, and we rely heavily on global trade, particularly for exports, whether it's our minerals, agricultural products, or our manufactured goods. But the organization is also often criticized for how it handles trade disputes, development issues, the balance between the powerful and the developing countries. Because at the core, I would imagine it aims to create economic peace and stability in the world, right? Through a multilateral system based on consenting member states. But then it also faces significant challenges, especially in recent years. Global trade tensions have increased, particularly between major economies like the United States and China. And that has raised questions about whether the organization is still capable to effectively manage disputes and maintain a rules-based trading system. So for developing countries like us, as South Africa, this organization remains important because it offers smaller economies sort of a rules-based system where disputes can be settled through legal mechanisms rather than economic power. But when you look at when Donald Trump announces things on Liberation Day, how does that affect the rest of the world, and where does the World Trade Organization come in? So we've invited Sibusiso Nyathi, who is a sustainability practitioner at Ubuntunomics, who is going to guide us through this conversation. And I'd like you to also join this chat on 011-883-0702. You can call us or send us a WhatsApp voice note on 072-702-1702. Sibusiso, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've tried to explain from my limited understanding what the World Trade Organization is all about. How do you see it? Why was it formed, and has it been able to live up to its mandate and expectations?
Well, the WTO was formed to help members use trade as a means to raise living standards in their respective countries. So, as you said earlier, it came up with global rules for trade, and the main objective is to make sure that trade flows smoothly and predictably between nation states who are members of the WTO, of course. And one of the ways in which they try to do that is by lowering trade barriers through negotiations between the countries and the WTO, and by breaking other barriers to trade. So they try to have an inclusive trading system, because that will give members an assurance and stability that if they work within the rules, everything will go smoothly. So, yeah, it is a way in which markets get opened and markets get open for producers and for consumers, it secures that supplies are readily available whenever needed. Yeah, that's
I see. So,
yes.
okay, can the World Trade Organization intervene in, for instance, the U.S. trade war? How does it work? So, how does an organization like this process and facilitate disputes?
Can it intervene? I mean, when Donald Trump came in, the World Trade Organization went into a spin. I mean, I don't think the current leader, Ms. Ngozi Okonjo, is on top of things, because what Donald Trump did was just unprecedented, because basically he rewrote trade rules. And after Liberation Day, we saw other countries rushing around. We saw global leaders like Modi going to various places to secure trade deals, to secure for India new markets. And we saw other countries from the EU going to China individually. I mean, Germany went to China, France went to China, etc. So countries suddenly came to realize that they were on their own. Basically, what Donald Trump had done was to nullify existing global rules of trade. Yeah.
So how do our decisions made within the World Trade Organization, and do all member countries have an equal say? Because what we've seen with these multilateral organizations is that the more powerful you are, the more rich you are as a country, the more influence you have in these organizations. So how does it work with this one?
Yeah, with this one, what happens is that countries try at the WTO to reach a consensus. They go through issues on a piecemeal type of a scenario, and once they've reached that consensus, then those decisions have to be sent to sovereign states, to various governments, and those various governments will take their decisions, those WTO decisions, to the various parliaments, and it is those parliaments in the various countries which are members of the WTO who will also thrash out those particular issues in their respective parliaments and reach an agreement to say, as country so and so, we ratify WTO rules. So basically what it all means is that it boils down to member states eventually agreeing to those particular decisions which have been made.
Oh, I see. So to use a practical example, when there were some proposals for some higher tariffs on the Chinese-made vehicles, that's not a decision that South Africa can just take on its own and implement. That must still be sent to the World Trade Organization first, and there must be consensus reached there before that decision gets implemented?
Yes, before that decision gets implemented, and the South African Parliament has to ratify that decision. Even if government can say, even if say a cabinet minister of trade can say this is what we want, a parliament still has to thrash out that issue and reach an agreement and say we also believe that we should increase tariffs on Chinese goods, and the Chinese also have the right to say, okay, this is how you're working, South Africa, we will also increase tariffs on certain products that which we get from you. So basically what has happened is that there is reciprocity now. If you do this to me, I'll do the other to you. That's why I'm saying that Liberation Day sort of nullified all WTO gains over the years, in that countries now, it's a tit for tat. You do this, I do that. If this suits you, this will suit me. So that's the current scenario. Yes.
Yeah, which is going to lead us through quite a problematic path. I want to touch on the issue of national sovereignty, because I know in the past I've heard some people, some opponents of the World Trade Organization argue that, since this organization functions as a global authority on trade and is within its right to review a country's domestic trade policies, then national sovereignty is compromised. And I'm interested in your thoughts on that, because if you take, for example, regulations a country may wish to establish to protect maybe its industry or workers or the environment, those could be considered barriers to the World Trade Organization's aim to facilitate free trade. So a country may have to sacrifice its interest then to avoid violating WTO agreements.
Yes, that happens because the way countries trade is on a comparative advantage basis. So if compared to country B, I can produce a certain product cheaper, then I will concentrate on that, on my comparative advantage. And what happens then is that governments are bound by WTO rules to keep their trade policies transparent. But it's almost like counterintuitive, because it's almost like saying company MTN, tell us your cost structure and then reveal that to Vodacom. These two countries, these two companies are in competition against each other. So that's what happens with countries too. And since they are in competition against each other, the countries tend not to reveal too much. They don't reveal how much they subsidize. Some subsidies are not transparent. A country can say, we will subsidize your electricity by 15%, for an example, but at the same time won't reveal that your haulage, which is your transportation, will also be subsidized. So countries are not entirely transparent, and so this is what causes imbalances, trade imbalances, among other things. Yes, yeah.
Okay, it's going up to 10 minutes now before 11 o'clock. After the break, if you've got questions for Sibusiso Nyathi about the World Trade Organization, you can call us on 011-883-0702, or maybe you've got inputs, you've got your own reflections about how this organization has been run. And also, as Sibusiso has said, what the US did on Liberation Day is to throw out the World Trade Organization rules book out of the window. They've really redefined world trade. So what do you make of then where the World Trade Organization finds itself now, given how the US has acted on Liberation Day? Your WhatsApps and voice notes after the break.
Transport, the driver of growth, job creation, inclusivity, and sustainability. 702, live from the National Transport Conference.
It's 7 minutes before 11 o'clock. We are in conversation with Sibusiso Nyathi, who is a sustainability practitioner as Ubuntunomics, and we're talking about the mandate and roles of the World Trade Organization. We're focusing on this because we're trying to understand the number of the multilateral institutions that we so often speak about. But do we actually know why they were formed, when they were formed, what the mandate has been, and how have these organizations run? And have they worked for us as developing countries? As Sibusiso, there's a question here from a listener on Twitter about the African Continental Free Trade Area. How does it come in here given that we already have agreements signed at the World Trade Organization? How do the two institutions then work hand in hand?
What we have in Africa is like what they have in, what we're trying to have is like what they have in the EU, where goods and services can easily go through borders within Europe. And so what we have in Africa, what they want to have in Africa is for goods and services to be able to access people to access markets in the various countries within Africa. So that's sort of like an intra-Africa arrangement. But that also still will have to fall in line with WTO rules, because everyone is a signatory. All the members are signatories of all the African members are still signatories of the WTO. So basically, it's almost like a sub institution when it comes to global trade rules. The rules that apply in Africa will have to be the same rules that govern global trade. Yeah.
The U.S. president once threatened to withdraw from the World Trade Organization. This was back in 2018. He was calling it a disaster. What would be the implications here if the U.S. moved to withdraw from the organization? There are trillions of dollars in global trade. I imagine that would be disrupted.
It would be disrupted, but as we have seen with the carbon emissions, with the Paris Accord, the U.S. pulled out, but other countries still carried on with their mandates, with their agreements. So the U.S. might pull out, but that doesn't really mean much. In that, basically, what would basically happen is that countries would trade less in the U.S. dollar. That's what would happen. The countries would trade in sort of like the yuan or the ruble, the Russian ruble, or the Indian rupee. That's what is happening already with that's what we are seeing with the war in Iran, where Iran is saying, okay, we will let your ships pass through the Strait of Hormuz if only you will be paying in yuan. So sort of like trying to force countries to move away from the petrodollar, from the US dollar. So if the US did that, if they pulled out, they would be hurting themselves because the hegemony that the US holds over the world is because of the dominance of the US dollar as a reserve currency for trade. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yes.
So it wouldn't work for them as a country. Sibusiso, thank you so much, man. Thank you for joining us for this chat and for helping us understand more about the World Trade Organization, how it operates, and what the consequences would be if we continue to have countries operate outside of the rules agreed at the World Trade Organization. It's 3 minutes now before